Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Laith Marouf. Laith, we're glad to say that Laith is back amongst us, that he has been freed from his arrest, and we got a lot to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf, and guess what? FreePalestine.video is Laith's website. You see that great website right there, FreePalestine.video. And, I've had a lot of people say to me, oh, I feel really bad and upset. And if there's something I could do, and as a matter of fact, there just happens to be something that you could do to help out, something you could do to show your dedication and to be part of a movement that is working to bring freedom to Palestine and to end the genocide. You can go to freepalestine.video, and guess what? Right there, we've got donate. So when you donate to help fund, you can do one time or you can do monthly. Obviously, it would be better off if you do monthly, because that would give them a recurring monthly revenue and allow Laith to continue his work that clearly the powers that be do not want to happen. So if you want to be a part of making the world a better place, if you want to be a part of doing something to help the people of Palestine, FreePalestine.video is the website. And look, it's not just that you're donating. There's great stuff there. There's field reports. You can keep up with going on with the military options, the military operations, and of course, go to social media links and follow FreePalestine.video on all their social media platforms. Of course, don't forget FreePalestine.video. Go there and be a part of a movement that's changing the world. Let's start here, Laith. Something that's been really eaten me, that really pissed me off. Before we get not just the fact that you were arrested, we'll get into that, of course, but this is something that pisses me off. I hear these people. Yes, they're talking about such and such country is going to recognize Palestine. And it's like, and if the Israelis don't do X by September 1st, whatever, it's like they're going to punish the Israelis. Like the Israelis give a crap if they write a document. How are they going to recognize Palestine? What are the Brits going to do? Are they going to bring out some guy with the trumpets and read from a scroll? We hear ye. We hereby say that we recognize Palestine. And then they'll go back in and continue to support the occupation, continue to support the genocide. It's a way of creating the illusion that you're doing something without doing anything, and still lock up anybody who criticizes Zionism in any way, shape, or form. To me, to even discuss these lunatics, that them recognizing Palestine, whatever that means, without doing absolutely anything to stop the genocide, is absolutely preposterous. And it's an actual insult to the people of Palestine, an insult to all of us. So I'm just saying, anybody out there who's having a discussion, well, do you think they'll free Palestine? I don't know. They're doing something. They're doing nothing. They're doing nothing. They're trying to brainwash you is what they're trying to do. Anyway, I know I got a little carried away, but it infuriates me. Laith.
I agree with you 100% there. And it's definitely only happening because the vast majority of people on this planet, including the vast majority of citizens of Western countries, if we want to call them that, are livid and angry at having to watch a genocide broadcasted for almost 2 years now, and that their own governments are refusing their democratic will as a people, whether they're American, Canadian, European peoples. They don't want to be participating in a genocide, and or their economy is funding it and their military is supporting it. And unfortunately, the political class and the propaganda media empires are refusing to allow the representation of the people's will in those countries. So we saw how that was, leading to beginnings of, signals of a maybe armed revolt that was going to happen, as we saw with the shooting of the two Israeli embassy propagandists in Washington, D.C., and the attack on those Zionists in Colorado with Molotovs. Those were all indicators to any sane leadership in the West that the suppression of the will of the people is getting to a boiling point, causing this pressure cooker. And though add to it the fact, you mentioned the criminalization of support of Palestine or opposition to the genocide. We saw what happened in the UK with the prescription of Palestine Action as a terrorist group, and which is a crazy move by the British government, because now this is telling the British public that there is no way you can get your government to manifest your will as citizens except through violence. And so I think all of these government leaders, the French, the British, the Canadians, that came out and said these things, it's because of their fear of the anger of their own citizens. And they're trying to diffuse this anger somehow with this bull talk about recognizing Palestine. We already know that the vast majority of nations on the planet, almost 90% of the nations that are members of the United Nations, are already recognized Palestine for decades, if not decades. And that didn't change anything in terms of the abuse by the Zionist colony of the indigenous Palestinian population. It didn't lead to anything. And this is now saying that they're only recognize Palestine in September if the Palestinians surrender and hand over their weapons. It never happened in the history of humanity that a people received nationhood through surrender. It's like they, I don't know who, they think they're talking to kindergarten children, which I think even a kindergarten child would recognize if they when the teacher is coming to take that stick that they hit another kid from, that it's not going to lead to a good outcome if you hand over that stick. So this is all propaganda, and it's not flying over anyone's head.
And I think the other thing is this. I think people in the West need to wake up to something, and that is that they're living in totalitarian states. People in America and Britain need to wake up to the reality that, and this is the way I put it, look, if these people committed genocide, they'll commit a genocide to you. You're an American citizen, a British citizen, a French citizen. You think they won't kill you just as quick as they'll kill the Palestinians? If they feel threatened, they will commit a genocide right at home. They'll mow you. They've done it in the past. So don't think that they would be like, well, I don't know. These are our citizens. Perhaps, maybe we should. No, they mean nothing to you. The people here have to wake up to understand what they're up against. Now, more and more, you see people outraged. They don't care. You see people screaming and yelling. I saw one Jewish lady, and you probably saw it, a video of this Jewish lady in Britain that said, we have to wake up to understand something. Hitler won. He made us, like him, right? And to me, that's one of the most honest statements, one of the most obvious statements I've seen. And not that, just that, in the same way that, look, you look at NATO and all of these Nazis, and next thing you know, NATO forms, and all of these like Nazis are at the head of NATO. They're leading NATO. We see Nazis marching all around in Ukraine, whatever. They're giving them money, right? You look around and you see all this Nazi monuments and memorabilia. That's who the leadership, the totalitarian leadership of these governments are. This is no democracy. Did you know this? Democratic Party, 92%. 92% of the people in the Democratic Party are in total opposition to what Israel's doing and the genocide and all this stuff. That means the 8% run the party. You know what I'm saying? To me, it also has to be a wake-up call to the people here. that they just as soon kill you as they would the Palestinians. That's the other part that people don't want to accept, the reality that they will eventually find out if they don't accept it.
Yeah, and look at how much of the war crimes list that are in the Geneva Convention that have now been normalized, whether it's direct targeting of journalists, the largest number of journalists killed in any battlefield since recording of journalists started. This is unbelievable that you have more journalists killed in Gaza than the combined number of journalists killed in World War I and II and Vietnam and Korea all together. The targeting of medical staff and medical facilities, the largest number of medical facilities and medical staff killed and targeted in any battlefield since the record started. The largest number of amputees in history. This is unbelievable. And, you know, the normalization of mass rape of prisoners, children, women, men, elderly to death, right? And the deliberate starvation of a whole nation. 2 million people starved in front of our cameras. This has not happened anywhere in recorded history in this manner. And we are now seeing that being normalized in other places. We saw what happened in Syria, how, you know, the mass rape and kidnappings and killings of Syria's minorities became a blip because, well, you know, it's nothing in comparison to what the Israelis are doing. And at some point, as we see, this is now bleeding into the realities within Western societies. And I can note here the Epstein files. The president of the United States, the elite of the United States are telling their public now, after we normalized mass rape of whole nations and children in Palestine and the killing fields of Western Asia, now we're being told, well, it's normal. Your elite rape kids and you have nothing to say about it and you can't do nothing about it. And the other stage that we saw of the normalization within Western societies now of these war crimes is those detention camps like Alligator Alcatraz in the middle of the Florida Everglades and swamp and put in
El
cages.
Salvador, other countries, they'll send you to another country. That's what a lot of people don't realize. That's what the Guantanamo Bay was about. It was about arguing that if you're in America, we got certain laws that you have to go by, Constitution, and you can go to a federal judge in the United States because they have jurisdiction. They send you to another country, the federal courts doesn't have jurisdiction. You can't sue, you can't, you know, all of these other things to really to put you in, to stick you in another country. You know what else it was about? Remember this. They had all of these black sites. The CIA was torturing people in various countries. Why did they do it there? Jurisdiction, so that I could do it in another country. And American citizens or whoever, you couldn't complain. So now they're mainstreaming that, saying, you know what, if you, I don't know, let's just say you protest against Zionism or something. It's that's what's coming. All they got to do is find another country that's willing to do it. And just say, we'll take American citizens, we'll take people that are legally here, we send them to another country. When they started doing those black sites with the CIA, it was inevitable that it was coming home to American citizens.
Yeah, and those, you know, that monstrous, massive jail in El Salvador is really a black site. You come in, you're not going to come out till you're dead. There's no court appeals. There's nobody that knows where you are. You're sleeping on metal for the rest of your life. It's literally back to slavery. This is how far we're gone. You know, once that Pandora's box was open and the elite and the media in the West normalized it, it's over. And so a human life as a whole right now is actually less worth than it was before the Holocaust and World War II. This is a scary moment. And I know most people, at least some people, are not recognizing this reality. And when they do, it's going to be too late. It is very important for all citizens, anywhere they are, to try to pressure their states into sane governance again, like the way that the courts are being ignored, for instance, in the UK and in France, and now beginnings of it in the US, with having those alligator Alcatraz. Is nothing legal about alligator Alcatraz. If we want to talk about within jurisdiction, how can you have these cages, open air cages, as if it's Guantanamo Bay on Florida's territory? So they're even crossing that line of what they used to hide behind, the black sites outside the U.S. to do these crimes. Now they are emboldened to this point of, creating these concentration camps within U.S. territory.
Absolutely. And, this business of Americans have to wake up, this business about we have a democracy, or there's two parties, or, you know what I mean? This talk of, yes, American democracy is an outcome, in my opinion. It's an outcome. What does it mean to me? I don't want to hear about how you voted, how you didn't vote. That's all irrelevant. In the end, this is democracy. And it doesn't even matter if it's a democracy. It could be a monarchy. It doesn't matter what the government is. In the end, what is the outcome? Does the government represent the people? Does the government act in the best interest of the people? If you've got a king and the people are happy and they're well fed and they have good jobs and they love the king and their life is good and it's peaceful, who cares? Who cares what kind of this whole concept of democracy? Ultimately, when we look and we see now the government who trafficked and raped systematically minors and used them for blackmail and extortion, and then says to the people, I'm going to release the list. And when the people say we want to release the list, they say, there is no list. But you told us they were going to release the list. It's basically what they're saying. Shut up. You have no right here. You got nothing. Yeah, we told you we're going to release the list. Yes, of course, there is a list. There's no list. That's what we tell you. You have no authority over us. We don't listen to you. As far as you're concerned, there is no list means shut up. So they're raping children. They're trafficking children. They're extorting and blackmailing. They're committing a genocide. They're genociding children, starving them. Every horrible thing that you could think of. And when you say we don't like it, they just say shut up. You don't have. And people are like, yes, we don't want a totalitarian government. We want democracy. What we have is the Fourth Reich, or maybe some iteration of the Third Reich. That's all it is to me at this point. It's obvious it's all it ever was. But when they didn't feel threatened, when their power wasn't threatened, when other countries weren't getting more powerful, when this neoliberal financialized system wasn't crashing to pieces, when everything wasn't going bad around them and they didn't feel threatened, they maintained the illusion that the people had some power. Now that they feel threatened, the truth is coming out. That's all it is to me.
Oh yeah. And I think this flagrant abuse of even this propaganda ploy of democracy is too much for even the most convinced people of this idea of Western democracy. I mean, you'd think that elite in the West will be smart enough to at least, let's say, allow part of the Congress or Parliament in the UK or Canada to oppose the genocide. Let it be less than 50%, just so they can say there's democracy, but the majority voted for supporting the genocide. You see what I mean? It would have played at least into the idea in the masses' mind that there's still hope. If I can just work a little bit harder for the next election, we can have a change and we can stop this genocide. But no, They don't want even their people to have a hope of possible democratic change. This is a suicidal move by these elites. I mean, what the hell? 90 somewhat percent, as you said, of Democrat members, voters are against it. And I don't, there's definitely less than 1% of the Democratic elected congressmen that are speaking anything against the genocide in Gaza. And they're speaking it even in weak, lukewarm, diluted messages. So this is can only be understood in two ways. Either truly all the elite in the West are insane and don't know their own good, or they are compromised. There's no third option. Either people elected the stupidest members of their society, which is not possible, right? And or there's something wrong behind the doors where these elected politicians are refusing the will of the vast majority of their population, and they don't care because whoever has something on them that is more harmful in their opinion than supporting the will of the people that they supposedly represent.
I did want to ask you now that we both of us had to rant about this, but it's obvious, and some people can't see it, and they think they can like vote their way out. Oh, we'll fix them in the midterms. Which Zionists do you want? That's what they'll say. Which Zionists? We've got a couple of Zionists. You choose the Zionists that you want, and we'll call that democracy. But if you could talk a little bit about what happened to you. Look, we understand that it's a dangerous time, and any things that you feel unnecessary that you don't want to. I'm not going to press anything. Whatever you can share with us, we would certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, first thing I would like to say is, as we mentioned in the beginning, we're living in a time that is very dangerous for journalists in the world, specifically those who are working covering Palestine or support the liberation of Palestine. And whatever happened to me, my detention for 3 days is nothing in comparison to what is happening to the Palestinian journalists in Gaza, the hundreds that were killed, and the thousands that are detained and tortured across Palestine. And even the Western societies or governments have been mistreating journalists. We saw the editor-in-chief of Electronic Intifada, Ali Abu Na'mi, being detained by the Swiss intelligence for 3 days, the same amount of time that I was detained, questioned because of his coverage of the genocide in Palestine. We saw the detention of Richard Medhurst in Vienna, in Austria, and in the UK. The same happened to former British Ambassador Craig Moray, and finally the RT correspondent here in Lebanon, Steve Sweeney, who is British, was detained a few weeks ago in the airport, and all his equipment and devices confiscated.
But I want to add one more name. I think it's Mary Kakitis. She's in Australia, and she's on trial for simply criticizing Zionism. Just saying, that's that bad. Okay, you're going to be going to jail for that.
Yes, and so I don't want this to become an issue about Laith Marouf being detained, because I was a lucky person in comparison to many others. And I don't want this to become an issue of, look at Lebanon, when we know those capitals of supposedly freedom of speech and media freedoms are doing the worst. Now, and also, I was, in those 3 days that I was detained, the longest held journalist in Lebanon since the end of the civil war in 1990. Since 1990, there's never been one journalist that was held more than 20 hours. So this was a very unusual situation. And what we understand right now is that as we were driving to report from Mace al Jabal, which is a small Lebanese village right on the border with occupied Palestine, that is kind of in a peninsula of Lebanese geography that jots into occupied Palestine, and it has Israeli bases from three sides of it. And as we were arriving, the Israeli military called the UNIFIL and called the Lebanese military intelligence, threatening our life, basically. We were doing a night report. We usually don't do night reports because of how dangerous the situation is. And this triggered big questions, and we were detained by the Lebanese military intelligence, myself specifically. Hadi Htait, my comrade and cameraman, was let go, but I was detained, moved between different offices of the military intelligence for 3 days and questioned. All my devices were searched. And there's nothing on me, and they realized how my coverage has been pro-Lebanon, pro-Palestine, against colonialism, against interference with the country, and they realized, with all the public pressure that came from Hadi Htait speaking to a lot of people, media personalities, and people like you, Garland, and others that shared the news on your shows, and the mass of viewers from the alternative media spheres, these progressive media spheres, like your show here, Garland, as well as the followers of FPTV. That brought tens of thousands of social media posts and hundreds of calls to the Canadian embassy and hundreds of emails, which led to the Consul General of the embassy here in Beirut, the Canadian embassy, to come to visit me in detention. And eventually I was released at the end of those 3 days. It wasn't very pleasant, I could say that. But I was not physically tortured or harmed. I was questioned, for hours at a time, and blindfolded, handcuffed. I don't feel like if there was supposed to be some psychological harm, the years of being a punching bag for the Zionists in Canada kind of prepared me for all that psychological torture, possible psychological torture. And since that day, I was invited again to the military intelligence and was informed about those details of the Israeli military, threatening our lives. And I was, kind of, apologized to about the misunderstanding. And they had issued me right now, military intelligence and security authorities, authorizations to be able to work all across Lebanon. So I think the Lebanese military intelligence have attempted since that day to correct any mistakes that they did, and that's more than we can think about for any foreign intelligence service. I don't think if I was detained by the Canadian CSIS and put on those situations as a journalist that I would ever receive a personal invitation and sit down and all these doors being open to me as a journalist as a result of that. So I think I was one of the lucky ones because my record is very clear, my history is clear, and because I was detained in Lebanon and not in Israel or Syria or Canada or the US.
That's the sad thing. You're better off there than if you'd have been detained here in the U.S. or, God forbid, Britain. You'd be like the Skripals, never heard from again. Basically, the Skripal. I mean, these are people who are supposedly citizens, and the UK says yes, we've got to help them out because somebody tried to Novichok them and kill. They'll never be seen again. Everybody knows the Skripals are dead. Everybody knows they're done. That we all know they're dead. They were tools used to go after, perceived enemies. So you're far better off. You don't even have to be reporting. You can kind of think about this. Sergei Skripal was a guy who was a Russian spy who became whatever, got caught, got traded, moved to England. So he was basically, in my opinion, it seems that he was working for the British, and they killed him anyway. I mean, you can't even be on these people's side. They'll kill you as a tool. So let's just say we're very happy that you were detained in Lebanon rather than U.S. or God forbid in Great Britain. I understand you were recently in Lebanon, in Tripoli, and that was a very interesting trip. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have, for the most part, over the last year and a half, been covering the war in the south of Lebanon, and the Bekaa Valley sometimes, and a couple of reports we did from the far north borders with Syria. But we haven't given Tripoli, the city of Tripoli, the second largest city in Lebanon, any attention, and it's been in the news cycle, specifically because Trump's envoy to Lebanon, Barak, last week, as a way to threaten the Lebanese government and state, to force them to confront Hezbollah, to disarm the resistance group, said that, well, Tripoli was part of Syria before the separation and partition in 1942 by the French occupation, and the Damascus government should get it back. So he's basically two things there. One is, 100 years ago, between the two world wars, the first movements of liberation here in the region were pan-Syrian. Okay, Syrian unification is led by the people like the Syrian Social National Party, and the French and the British fought all the efforts to reunify Syria and killed all the leadership of the SSNP, including the founder Antoine Saadé. And now, 100 years later, it is the Americans that are calling for reunification of Syria, but not under secularist, democratic, pan-Syrian, pan-religious, pan-ethnic leadership like the SSNP, but under the leadership of a Wahhabi death squad, HTS, that is governing now Damascus. This is how it's really, almost fantastical to hear those words come out of the envoy of Trump. So we decided to go to Tripoli, give a window into the city to our viewers. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous, beautiful city. It is the most important and oldest port city, in the Eastern Mediterranean. The name Tripoli comes from the Greek words tripolis, which means three cities, because the three city states of the Phoenician Canaanites in the village, in the island of Erwad, across from Tartus in Syria, and in Saida and Tyre, created a federation and built their capital on that grounds where Tripoli is. So it was like the three cities capital. The city has some of the oldest archaeological sites in the region, including Stone Age caves, beautiful architecture, the largest amount of Mamluk architecture outside Egypt, a huge, the largest still standing Crusader fort, and the city is mainly Sunni, but has Shia, Alawites, and Christians in the heart of the city and on the sides of it. And, it's a merchant city that has suffered severely because of the partition, because Homs and Hama in Syria used to use Tartus as their port for export. And with the partition in 1942, the economy collapsed in the port city. And although the richest people in Tripoli are actually the richest people in Lebanon. There's at least 4 billionaires from Tripoli city in comparison to other cities in Lebanon. That some of them that made it up to the prime minister position, but they've purposefully neglected the city and didn't invest in it to make the population of Tripoli into either cheap labor that is exported through the sea to Europe and or easy pickings for the terrorist Wahhabi death squads funded by the Turks, the Saudis, the Israelis, and the Americans. And Tripoli exported a lot of those Wahhabi death squad members because of money. People are, it's not really that they're Wahhabi, they just need money and they become mercenaries into Syria. It was one of the main entrances of terrorists into Syria during the 15-year war there. So we did this documentary. We hope that you can watch it. There's a lot of very happy moments, a lot of beautiful things, a lot of amazing music from Tripoli city. It's on our website, freepalestine.video, on our YouTube video and X, and I encourage everybody to watch it.
Thank you. I did want to ask you about this. This is the 5-year anniversary of the explosion in Beirut, which, you know, we were what we were originally. Oh yes, it's you know, this is some kind of you know, they just had some a fertilizer, and it's always fertilizer. They had some fertilizer in the wrong place. Maybe somebody, you know, slipped and a spark happened or whatever. You know, they blew the hell. It looked like an atomic bomb, and we're supposed to believe it was just a little fertilizer accident. And in light of everything that's going on now, to me, it should be more obvious that this was an attack. Your thoughts? This is my opinion. I don't have the evidence. In light of what's going on, I don't feel like I need more evidence. To me, it's pretty obvious. But at any rate, your thoughts?
Yes, it's the 5-year anniversary. 2,000 plus people were victims of the explosion, and at least 250 were martyred. And we should, you know, even if we don't want to come to conclusions ourselves or prove something, we can give our audience the question marks that are out there, and they can pursue that themselves. Number one being that the nitrates that were stationed in this hangar beside the silos in the port came from a ship coming out from Ukraine, going to supposedly Africa, and supposedly it had technical problems in 2013. Remember, 2013 was the beginning, you know, the heydays of the war in Syria, and there was, you know, tons of fertilizers and other chemicals being smuggled through Lebanon into Syria to help the terrorists make those homemade bombs, roadside bombs, and what have you. And this ship decided that it's having technical problems, and it forced itself into the port of Beirut against the will of the authorities, with the UN UNIFIL actually allowing it to cross into Lebanese territory. The UNIFIL that's blockading Lebanon so nobody can smuggle anything to the resistance allowed this ship to go into the port unmonitored. And as soon as it got into the port, it docked and it started sinking. You know, all these tons of nitrates were moved into the hangar beside the silos. The ship workers, the ship seamen, were not allowed to disembark because the owner of the ship abandoned the ship. The owner of the shipment of nitrates abandoned the nitrate. The whole company behind it just disappeared and bankrupted, as you know, and nobody could trace them. And the seamen were stuck for 6 months on the ship until the Lebanese authority allowed them to leave. That was in 2013. That ammonia sat in this dilapidated you know, hangar beside the silos for 7 years, wet and piled incorrectly and so forth. And then we are told the explosion was started by Syrian workers that were welding the metal doors. Now, this is, we don't have to talk much about it, but it was an attempt to blame the Syrian people or migrant workers. Another point that we should note to our viewers is that the hangar was on a metal fortified cement cube that is built on the bedrock stone in the water. And the explosion left a 40-meter deep, perfectly circular hole in the queue and in the bedrock of the seabed. Okay. And historically, of course, we know that any explosive that is not compacted in something explodes up. It's open space, up and sides, and specifically nitrates never usually leave a crater. We know, as a Canadian, the largest explosion in the history of Canada was the explosion of the port of Halifax, when a ship full of nitrates exploded in the port of Halifax, destroyed the whole city that was made of wood, the housing, but never left a crater. So we know historically there's never been any craters left behind by nitrate explosions, certainly not ones that are not compacted into a shell shape where the explosion is directed somewhere. Emperor Trump, within minutes of the explosion, came out in front of the media on television and said Israel was behind the attack on the port of Beirut. Within hours, we heard the United Arab Emirates saying that it's thinking of building a train tracks from the UAE all the way to Haifa to replace the port of Beirut, which was the busiest port in the east of Mediterranean. And we saw that come into effect during this Aqsa flood, how the shipping happened from the Emirates as Yemen was blockading the Red Sea. Shipping came through the Emirates to Saudi, to Jordan, to the Zionist colony. All of these are question marks, and until today, no court has ruled who was behind this, how did this happen. No one was either charged for negligence or for plotting this, and not one government that has non-stop satellite surveillance of the port of Beirut handed over any of the footage of those moments of the explosion.
Yeah, it was, I mean, the whole thing stinks of the fact that all of the stuff came out of Eastern Europe, where you've got the Ukraine and you've got all of these NATO and US puppets. It's just, to me, it's so obvious what was going on there. I did want to ask you, we got a few more minutes. I saw recently that Yemen had shot some more missiles. What do we need to know about Yemen?
Oh yeah, Yemen is escalating its solidarity front. On the one hand, they are shooting almost every 2 days missiles and drones on the Zionist colony, and they have escalated their naval blockade of in the Red Sea to not only ships that are heading towards Israeli ports or ships that are owned by Israeli companies, but now they have added to that any shipping company that docks in the Zionist colony, their ships will be targeted in the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea, and the Red Sea. And this has led to huge increases in the insurance prices for ships that are of companies that dock in Israeli ports. And also we're seeing even Maersk, the largest shipping company, container shipping company in the world, saying that it's going to stop its deliveries to the Zionist colonies. And so Yemen's actions are, I think, the wisest we've seen. I wish Spain, who has now, is speaking in the highest tone in Europe. I wish Spain can do the same in Gibraltar and block the Strait of Gibraltar to the weapons shipments coming from the UK, Germany, and the US towards the Zionist colony. That would be the final coffin, a nail in the coffin of Israel, if Spain can rise up to the courage of Yemen.
Yeah, I think you're right. What Yemen is doing is absolutely incredible. I think there was anything. Is there any other issues that you think needs to be covered? Let me ask you this. I haven't heard much about Iraq lately. I haven't heard much about what's going. Iraq is not discussed, but I know that the U.S. maintains a heavy presence in Iraq. I've read recently that, which shouldn't be surprised, that the Mossad has bases in Iraq. I've read that it's possible that Israel has been flying out of, like when they were attacking Iran, flying out of bases in northern Iraq, Kurdish part of Iraq, that basically Iraq is really a lot of areas used by the U.S. empire as a forward operating base for a lot of its filthy deeds.
When I was in Iraq a couple of weeks ago, I wanted to go to the north of Iraq. I had permits to travel in all of Iraq except the north. And the federal government of Iraq had no authority to give me any permits. I would have had to get permits from the Erbil government, the treacherous Kurdish collaborationist government there. And Iraqi citizens cannot enter the north of Iraq without the permits from this government. Can you imagine that? So in reality, there's no Iraq. What we see on the map doesn't exist. Of course, the whole ISIS slaughter that happened in the north of Iraq was deliberate to depopulate the north of Iraq from its Arab and Assyrian indigenous inhabitants, to allow both the Kurdish militias to come down from the mountains and take over the floodplains between the Euphrates and the Tigris in the north, and for the Turks to occupy part of the north. There's at least 40 Turkish bases in the north of Iraq, not one, not two, not three. And so, in a way, there is no Iraqi federal government control, and definitely it is very, very plausible that the Israeli Air Force was either flying drones from there and or mainly using that airspace of Iraq to target the western parts of Iran. This is along with, of course, the Azerbaijani airspace and air bases. And this is, over the last 2 weeks, we saw what could be behind the scene intelligence, Iranian intelligence, resistance intelligence movements to weaken the hold of the Barzani family that has been ruling Iraqi Kurdistan for decades. We saw those fights between the Barzan family and another one of the large families. They called it tribal fights. The gunfights lasted days, and hundreds of fighters from both sides were killed. So, if Kurdistan, Iraq region continues on this path of attempted support to Zionist plots to destabilize Iran, specifically the Kurdish regions of Iran that are right on the border with Iraq, I think the Iranian government will respond in kind in terms of destabilization. And the last time we remember that Iran got really pissed at the Kurdish collaborationists in northern Iraq, the Iranian military deployed on all of Iraq's border and pushed the Kurdish forces away from even the border posts inside Iraq within minutes. And they were right overlooking Erbil and could have just walked into the city, the Iranian military forces. So threats are there by Iran against, they don't have to say anything publicly. They're not saying anything publicly. Everybody understands every move that is happening, that is in leadership in Kurdistan, Iraq. And I think they're probably now more cautious in anything that they can provide as services to the Zionists.
I've been reading lately, people discussing, well, is Israel going to attack Iran again? Is the U.S. going to attack Iran? And there are a lot of people that thinks that yes, or they will. I don't think they will. And I'll tell you why. I may be wrong. We're all guessing. We don't know. We're all speculating. I'll tell you why. Something that's been hidden in Western media, but if you dig enough, you can find it. And that is one of the telling signs after the 12-day conflict was how many appeals there were to the Israeli government for buildings to be repaired, et cetera. And apparently there was 30, somewhere I've heard numbers anywhere from 30 to 40,000 buildings. Basically, I've read a lot that the Israelis are covering up the amount of damage that happened, that in those 12 days, they had to stop because Israel was being dismantled, that they couldn't do another 12 days. A, they would run out of any defensive weapons, and B, they'd be completely naked, that Iran could literally, basically wipe Israel off the map in 30 days if they couldn't take another 10 days of that. But my point is, maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't think they will, because I think they were so devastated, they're still hiding the amount of destruction. They're trying to, but I think it's getting harder and harder, that Iran's missile capability was far greater than Israel or the United States had ever imagined. And that Israel they had to go back. All they could do was go back to try to demonstrate power by killing and murdering civilians. But when they went against a military power, they were pretty much crushed.
Yes, you're fully correct there. And we can say in a way that the United States, tried to intervene with more power than the Israelis did against Iran. And they brought the intensity of the war right up to the threshold of nuclear weapons. So the United States used its most advanced bombers with its largest bombs just below the nuclear threshold to face off with Iran, and failed. And Iran retaliated in a way that is, some people would call it symbolic, but if we think about it a little bit more, here's a nuclear superpower, the United States, that used all its might below that nuclear threshold to attack you and failed. If you go and slap it silly publicly, humiliate it, that power has no choice but to retaliate with a nuclear weapon. So Iran had to retaliate against the United States in a way that proves that in a full-out confrontation between the U.S. and Iran, the U.S. will be severely harmed. But in that same retaliation should not force the U.S. to use its nuclear hand, basically. And once that was done, I think Iran also, remember, it continued for 2 days to bomb Israel, and destroyed much of its air defense systems, its command and control centers, its intelligence gathering, all of those things. But again, didn't want to push Israel to a point where Israel will use one of its 200 nuclear weapons that it has. Now, that is why the war stopped, because Israel couldn't protect itself at that point, and the United States was not willing to protect it in a way of using a nuclear weapon on its behalf. So that, the strategy of Iran was very smart, and now Israel is cornered back to its size of it can barely fight a militia of a few thousand fighters in Gaza, and its only projection of force is mass starvation of children. So now we know the true size of this filthy colony.
Yeah, I think you're right. They have been thoroughly defeated. Israel's been defeated. The United States has been defeated. Not just defeated in you being defeated in Ukraine. They're defeated in economically going trying to now they're going to try to push China and India around. They're being defeated all over because they won't accept a reality that the U.S. doesn't have the power that it thinks it has. That's a reality, and they can't live with that. They can't accept that, and so they're trying to ways to demonstrate it. And I think they're at this point thoroughly defeated. All they can do is kill civilians. Militarily, everything they go up against, they lose. And I did want to ask you this business. I don't know if you can even comment on it. They're telling, okay, Hamas, you have to disarm, and then then we will recognize Palestine. What a joke. And Hezbollah has to disarm. Now everybody remembers what happens in Libya. North Korea remembers, if you disarm, hey, put your gun down, I'll be your friend. You put your gun down, they say, great, now you're unarmed, I can kill you. Nobody's going to disarm. What's this business about telling Hezbollah and Lebanon to arm? What everybody, I think, recognizes is this: that's not even an option. If you disarm, I'm like this. If I disarm, you're going to kill me. I might as well fight to the death because you're going to kill me anyway. What difference does it make? At least if you kill me, I'm going to inflict so much pain upon you that you won't do it again, or you'll be crippled when you get finished. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this is so crazy and serious as a demand on Lebanon, because and I can show you how changed the sentiment is in Lebanese society since not only the genocide in Gaza and the war on Lebanon, but also the genocide in Syria that has been unfolding for the last 6 months or 7 months. And so the best indicator of this change in opinion in Lebanon was the leader of the Kataib party. The Kataib is like a Christian supremacist party. The father of the current leader, was the right hand of Israel during its occupation in 1982 and was appointed as the prime minister of Lebanon by the Israeli occupation, and then blown up by the resistance and the Syrian army and killed. So this guy from the Jmayel dynasty, leading the Kataib party, was asked earlier in the week about disarming Hezbollah. And his answer, I think, shook probably the Americans and the Israelis to their core, because he answered saying, this is not the right time to talk about disarming Hezbollah, even with our differences with them. It's because, as we have been watching the genocide of Christians, Alawites, Druze, and Shia in Syria, we cannot open this file at all. This is the only thing that's protecting us. And this comes as all the media and analysts in Lebanon are reporting how regular, Joe Blow Christian or Druze in Lebanon, who's not even affiliated with any of the parties, everyone is arming to the teeth. Every citizen that can, go and purchase a machine gun, a handgun, even grenades, they're buying them and they're stocking them in their houses. Everybody does not want to even depend on a party to protect their life or the life of their children or their wives and daughters from these, Wahhabi hordes that are mass raping and butchering people in Syria, and or the Zionists that are mass raping and butchering people in Gaza. So this is the public mood in Lebanon for all people from all backgrounds are against the disarmament of Hezbollah currently, and are arming themselves to protect themselves in the situation where a Wahhabi or a Zionist invasion happens.
Yes, I think you're right. You know, it's the greatest fear for the empire is when the masses of people arm themselves. You know, I've been to Venezuela, and one thing I found out about Venezuela, and one of the reasons that the United States government, you know, of all places, they would not invade, and they want that oil bad. But what you find out is they've armed all of the population. And when you talk to the people, they say to me, you go back and tell the Americans we will fight for our democracy. When they tried this infamous Bay of Piglets, where they had a bunch of mercenaries were supposed to go in by boat, and then they were going to somehow, what an idiotic, they were somehow going to make their way to Maduro's place and kidnap him or kill him or whatever and overthrow the government. 60 people were going to overthrow a country of 30 million. But okay, they came in, a bunch of fishermen saw them. They went in, they got their guns, and I've been there. I've seen what they do. The militia, everyone is in the militia. Everyone in the country is in the militia. And they have like a jumpsuit. It's like a brown, like a military, but it's like a tan. You know what they did? They saw these people. They got their guns. These were ordinary fishermen. You know what they did? They got a shootout with them and killed almost all of them and captured the rest. These were the people. You can't defeat a country if all the people are armed. And they say, oh, well, you send a bunch of mercenaries. They did not need to dispatch the government. They didn't need to dispatch troops. Everyday fishermen, they're armed. They got their guns. You got a shootout with them. They took out the ones they want. The rest of them surrendered. So the great fear of the empire is exactly what you're saying, that they have so afraid. If I'm sitting here and I got, you know, some guy's got his wife and his kids, and he says, I got to have guns. If these hordes come to my home, I'm not saying I'm going to survive, but they're going to have a bad day. Some of them ain't leaving here. A whole bunch of them ain't leaving here, right? And everybody says that they can't really do those things if everybody's armed and everybody's ready to fight. Now, there are no hordes anymore. There's more people. So I think personally, I think that's a good thing. And I think that's the only thing that can deter them. And if it can't deter them, then you can kill them all, which is even better than deterrence. That's the way I see it.
Yes. And this is how, unfortunately, the only way that the colonialists will leave our land is with their military defeat. And if we're strong enough, there's nothing we can do to convince these people to treat us as humans. We have to force them to do so.
Well, you know, I will use this before we go, this analogy. When people talk about you know, negotiating with Israel now, or talking with them, or discussing something, how we're going to get them to do something. Well, I always use the Jurassic Park. You know, there's a bunch of people, you know, you saw the Jurassic Park, and they're sitting there and they're in the Jeeps or whatever they're in, and the big Tyrannosaurus Rex comes out, and he's trying to eat the people in the front Jeep, and he's rolling it around. He's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And if you and I are sitting in the back Jeep and we were to look at each other, and I was to say, you know, I think we should go up there and try to negotiate with the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Maybe perhaps we could get a deal. You can't negotiate with it. It's eating people. That's what it does. At some point, you have to come to a reality. You have an entity there that is not rational, cannot be negotiated, and only intends to eat you. You must get out of the way, or run, or kill it, or defeat it. But negotiation is not an option. That's Zionism. That's the U.S. empire. The idea that you're going to make a deal with these people, it's not rational. If I said, yeah, do you think we could talk to the Tyrannosaurus Rex? Everybody would say, well, you're crazy. But I'll tell you what, go up there and give it a shot and let us know how it works out. Everybody who tries to negotiate with these people, that's the way I see them, an irrational, monstrous, killing beast.
You know, a Zionist could misunderstand you there and say you're saying that all the world is promised to them, and their blood goes all the way back to the dinosaurs.
Yeah, there we go. That's probably how they would. And I would say, there you go, everybody. That's what you're dealing with. Even more evidence, or more evidence they're irrational. Well, thank you very much.
Or that you're seeing that they're lizard people from space.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about space Jews and our brother, what's his name? The comedian.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's check out, this is critical before we go, and that is freepalestine.video. That's the website that Laith works with. You can see the great work that they're doing. So if you want to go, and of course, the latest episodes are there. You've got field reports, you've got military operations, all of the things that you're interested in, that you need to see. And this is important. It's all in English. So it's English, it's reporting in English so that people in the West can see what's going on. But here's the critical part of that. Donate to Free Palestine TV. If you're really concerned and you want to be a part of doing the right thing and of helping, donate to Free Palestine TV. You can do a one-time donation, and you might not have that much. You might say, well, I don't have much money. A one-time donation is not going to do anything. Guess what? Make it monthly. You can make, even if you do a small donation, but you make it monthly, a lot of small donations coming in monthly make a big difference. Think about it. That is the, that's what the a lot of companies work off, getting $30 a month from 1 million people. And actually, they got 30 million a month, right? It makes a difference. So if you can give $5, $10 a month, $20 a month, whatever it is, $5 a month. If you're poor, like, I don't have any money, but I can do $5. If enough people do that, it makes a difference. So whatever you can get. And of course, make sure the important thing, follow the social media links and share freepalestine.video on all of your social media platforms, and make sure that you put on your post to people what I just said, that the important thing when they go there is to donate and keep it going. Thanks a lot, Laith. Certainly appreciate it, and have a good day. Everybody, make sure you share this on all your social media platforms.